a new Gaza deal. We are telling you all about the warning and the larger implications. Also on the show for you tonight, Pakistanis appear to be increasingly angry with Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and Field Marshal Asim Munir. We tell you more about what's brewing. We're also telling you how Russia is turning the spotlight on the BrahMos missile, one of the strongest symbols of the defense cooperation between the two sides. All this and more coming your way.
So today is a historic day for peace, and Prime Minister Netanyahu.
If Hamas rejects your plan, Mr. President, then Israel will finish the job by itself.
Israel would have my full backing to finish the job.
The United States has issued a big ultimatum to Hamas. Standing beside the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, U.S. President Donald Trump has given Hamas just 72 hours to accept what he calls a new Gaza deal, a plan that promises an end to the war in Gaza if hostages are released and Gaza is demilitarized. But it also comes with a warning. Reject it, and Israel will have America's full backing to, in Trump's own words, finish the job. What does finish the job really mean? If the war drags on for, say, another 6 months, how many more will die is the question that many are asking. What is the true price of refusal if that happens?
كله هلا كله بحكي هلا.
The United Nations, which has condemned Israel for its actions in Gaza and called it genocide, quote unquote, has welcomed the plan. The European Union has welcomed it. Russia has said it hopes that the plan is implemented. Even Israelis are welcoming the plan reportedly. But questions still there over whether Hamas would accept the plan or not. Already, Palestinians have expressed disappointment, saying that the peace plan, as it stands right now, only serves the U.S. and Israel.
The Palestinian people will not accept a new mandate. They will not accept giving up their rights, and they will not give up international law. We reject this plan.
This plan falls in Trump and Israel's favor. They have interests in Gaza. They want to end Gaza in any way possible. Gas in Gaza, they want to turn into Trump resorts, and he wants to finish his plan. And all these complications are from Trump and Netanyahu, and if they wanted to solve, they would have solved it a long time ago. We are the victims here. The whole world is watching us today as we get slaughtered. No one is standing with us, and all this is in favor of the Jews, and the whole world today are serving Israel.
And speaking at a joint White House press conference following a meeting with Netanyahu, Donald Trump said they were beyond very close to an elusive peace deal for Gaza, beyond very close. But he also warned Hamas that Israel would have full U.S. support to take whatever action it deemed necessary if they rejected what he has offered. The White House released a 20-point document, basically, that called for an immediate ceasefire, an exchange of hostages held by Hamas, release of Palestinian prisoners held by Israel, a staged Israeli withdrawal from Gaza, Hamas disarmament, and a transitional government led by an international body. It is being reported that Trump went into Monday's meeting seeking to overcome Netanyahu's misgivings over parts of the plan. But it was not immediately clear whether the Trump administration and Israel had resolved all their differences. Their differences had included the possibility of a future Palestinian state, which Netanyahu has forcefully rejected, and also any role for the Palestinian Authority in post-war governance of the Gaza Strip. What we did see is Trump thanking Netanyahu for agreeing to the plan and for, in his words, trusting that if we work together, we can bring an end to the death and destruction that we have seen for so many years, decades, even centuries, quote unquote. Standing next to Trump, Netanyahu, in fact, responded saying that he supports the plan as it achieves Israel's war aims. But it is also important to know here that Hamas remains the key to whether Trump's peace proposals actually get off the ground or not. Hamas's absence from the talks and its previous repeated refusals to disarm, raising doubts about the plan's viability. Hamas, remember, had triggered this when on October 7, 2023, it carried out a coordinated attack on Israel, taking hostages. 48 of them it still holds, 20 of them still alive, according to Israel. An official briefed on the talks has said that Qatar and Egypt have shared the document with Hamas, which told the mediators that they will review it in good faith and then respond. This was Netanyahu's fourth White House visit, by the way, since Trump returned to office in January this year. The Israeli Prime Minister was looking to bolster his country's most important relationship after a number of Western leaders formally embraced Palestinian statehood at the United Nations last week in defiance of the U.S. and Israel. But even though Trump had sharply criticized the recognition of statehood as a prize for Hamas, Monday's meeting marked a stepped-up diplomatic effort from the United States president, who had vowed during his presidential campaign, remember, to quickly bring the war to a close. And he has since repeatedly claimed that a peace deal was near, only for it to fail to materialize. Netanyahu, while praising Trump as a friend of Israel, put some distance between himself and some items in Trump's plan, including the reforms being demanded of the internationally recognized Palestinian Authority and the prospects for eventual Palestinian statehood. It all comes as Netanyahu is under mounting pressure from the hostages' families and, according to public opinion polls, a war-weary Israeli public. But he also risks the collapse of his governing coalition if the far-right ministers believe he has made too many concessions for a peace deal. And as for the Palestinian Authority, news agency reporting that it has welcomed Trump's efforts on Monday and reiterated its commitment to work with America and partners to reach a comprehensive deal. The plan coming as Israel has launched one of its biggest offensives of the war this month, with Netanyahu saying he aims to wipe out Hamas in its final version. In fact, the war has left much of Gaza in ruin and caused a major humanitarian crisis. Shifting our focus now to Pakistan. Pakistanis appear to be increasingly angry with the Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif and Field Marshal Asim Munir. Why is that? Because in Washington, U.S. President Donald Trump has praised both Sharif and Asim Munir for backing his Gaza peace proposal. Trump, speaking from the White House, called the two leaders incredible and credited them with supporting his 20-point formula to end the Israel-Hamas war right from the start. Trump said that Islamabad is fully on board with the plan and has publicly endorsed it. That praise followed Trump's Oval Office meeting last week with Shehbaz Sharif and Asim Munir, where interestingly both Munir and Sharif were left waiting across the room in the Oval Office, while Trump was signing executive orders and talking with the reporters there. The praise from Washington, though, has triggered massive anger back in Pakistan. It's important to note here that at the United Nations General Assembly, Shehbaz Sharif condemned Israel's bombardment of Gaza, describing it as one of history's darkest chapters. He called it a quote-unquote genocidal assault against women and children and demanded an urgent ceasefire. Yet, despite those words, opposition leaders in Pakistan saying the Prime Minister and Munir have betrayed Pakistan's traditional pro-Palestinian position by throwing their weight behind Trump's blueprint. The Palestine Action Coalition in Pakistan denounced Shehbaz's stance as shameful and accused him of selling out national principles. According to the group, the government's acceptance of Trump's plan insults the sacrifices Pakistanis have made for the Palestinian cause. Notably, during the same visit to the United States, Pakistan's Prime Minister also met with Daniel Rosen, the president of the American Jewish Congress. All of these developments coming amid massive row in Pakistan over the inclusion of a media activist with a pro-Israel tilt. In the past, photos surfaced of columnist and social media activist Shama Junejo seated behind Pakistan Defense Minister Khwaja Asif at a UN Security Council session on artificial intelligence. Junejo, who in the past posts expressed admiration for Israel and Prime Minister Netanyahu, claimed that she was invited as an advisor to Shehbaz Sharif's delegation. Her presence caused outrage on social media, where some users accused the government of sneaking an Israel supporter into Pakistan's official mission. Khwaja Asif himself demanded a response on X, saying only the Foreign Office could explain how exactly she ended up being there. The Pakistan Foreign Office later insisted that Junejo was not on the official delegation list and that her seat had no formal approval. But the explanation has not silenced the matter. Pakistani politicians like Shireen Mazari and Fawad Chaudhry slamming the government for allowing Junejo's entry on social media. PTI leader Asad Kaiser raised even sharper questions like who cleared Junejo to fly on the official Pakistani VIP aircraft from London to New York? Who granted her access to the state files? Who issued her UN passes? And most importantly, who authorized her to sit directly behind the defense minister? Not just that, Kaiser accused both Khwaja Asif and the foreign minister of hiding the truth, warning that Junejo's meetings with the Israeli diplomats raise serious concerns about Pakistan's diplomatic integrity. And the uproar has fueled suspicion amid politicians and citizens on social media that the government is softening its hardline stance on Israel in exchange for American favor. And with the civil society groups arguing that no deal, no dollars, no foreign pressure can erase Pakistan's historic commitment to Al-Aqsa and the Palestinian struggle. They demand Shehbaz Sharif withdraw his endorsement of Trump's formula and apologize to the nation. In fact, in a post on social media activist Shama Junejo alleging that former Prime Minister Imran Khan's government entered into back-channel diplomacy talks with Israel, further claiming that a PTI member of the National Assembly of Pakistan had proposed to recognize Israel in the Pakistan Assembly, further reiterating the point that Pakistan has been acting dubiously and hypocritically when it comes to Israel. At the core of this matter, basically, lie several crucial questions. Has Pakistan's leadership traded decades of unwavering support for Palestine for gains in Washington? Is Pakistan trying to join the Abraham Accords? Abdul Basit, former High Commissioner of Pakistan to India, in a post on social media has said that it would be a huge mistake by Pakistan to join the Abraham Accords before the establishment of the state of Palestine. And for many citizens, politicians, even former diplomats, Trump's praise for Pakistan is perhaps a sign of betrayal. The debate in Islamabad is only growing and the pressure on Sharif and Munir is rising. Russian President Vladimir Putin is set to visit India this December. And ahead of that high-stakes summit, Moscow is turning the spotlight on one of the strongest symbols of the defense cooperation between the two sides, the BrahMos missile. In an exclusive conversation with WION, Babushkin hailed the BrahMos program as a missile with unlimited potential for tactical upgradation, calling it a pillar of the India-Russia strategic partnership. We'll tell you more about this. Now, BrahMos is all set to get bigger, faster, and even deadlier. Originally developed in the mid-1990s by India's DRDO and Russia's MPOM, the BrahMos was designed with a range of 290 kilometers, and over time its range has been extended to 450 kilometers. And now the next generation BrahMos is reportedly in the pipeline and boasts a range of up to 800 kilometers. Now this new variant will be lighter and sleeker and will allow great mobility. The variant will be suitable for deployment on platforms like India's indigenous Tejas fighter jet, which will be able to carry two of these missiles simultaneously. Just to understand just how significant all of this really is, it's worth comparing the missile to Russia's own missile, which is another supersonic cruise missile that shares technological roots with BrahMos. In fact, while it is a formidable weapon in its own right, BrahMos has outpaced it in terms of global appeal and platform versatility. With a speed of Mach 3, sea-skimming capabilities, precision strike features, BrahMos is a proven arsenal during Operation Sindoor. In fact, beyond firepower, the missile is now turning into a strategic asset for India's economy and diplomacy. With the first export deal already signed with the Philippines for $375 million. Other countries also lining up. According to media reports, countries across Southeast Asia, West Asia, Africa, South America have expressed strong interest in acquiring the BrahMos. This growing export potential coming at a time when India is pushing to become a major global defense manufacturer. BrahMos could be the crown jewel of that push. As President Putin and Prime Minister Modi prepare to meet in December, BrahMos standing as a powerful symbol, and not just of military strength, but of decades of trust, technology transfer, also transformation. Also on the show for you tonight, is the U.S. government inching closer to shut down? We tell you all that you need to know. What is Nepal's 5-year plan to clean the Mount Everest all about? We get to the complete story. All this and more coming up. The devastating tragedy in Tamil Nadu, where at least 41 people, including young children, lost their lives in a stampede during a rally led by actor-turned-politician Vijay in Karur district, raising sharp questions about accountability, planning, and the safety of public gatherings overall. The chaos reportedly began with a crowd of supporters surging towards the actor's campaign bus, and in that frantic rush, several people fell, and within minutes, the situation spiraled into a deadly stampede. Survivors recounted scenes of panic and helplessness, with cries for aid drowned in the frenzy of the crowd. Questions being raised including, why was the crowd not controlled? Why did the organizers fail to anticipate such a surge, knowing the popularity of actors like Vijay? The actor, by the way, heads the party and had arrived several hours late to the rally. And in a video message afterwards, he distanced himself, it seems, from responsibility, accusing the Tamil Nadu chief minister of using the tragedy to target him politically. He also alleged a conspiracy, arguing that no such incidents had occurred in his other rallies across 5 districts. But then, does passing the blame in a way absolve anyone? Because families of the victims are not looking for political accusations. They are demanding answers. And this incident is not an isolated one. India has witnessed a disturbing rise in stampedes recently, each claiming innocent lives. Just this June, during RCB's victory celebration in Bengaluru, at least 11 fans were crushed to death. Who authorized the crowd control there, and why did it fail, was the question asked. Earlier this year, in February, meanwhile, at the New Delhi railway station, 18 pilgrims bound for the Kumbh Mela were killed in a midnight stampede. Once again, who took responsibility? Who ensured the safety of thousands moving through a congested station? The Kumbh Mela itself saw tragedy in January when 30 devotees were trampled at the Sangam. Despite decades of experience in managing one of the world's largest religious gatherings, basic crowd safety and management continuing to remain a major issue. And let's not forget last December when chaos during a screening of Pushpa 2 in Hyderabad took the life of a woman and left a boy injured. Fans had gathered to catch a glimpse of the actor Allu Arjun during the premiere. So tonight we are asking, why are mass gatherings in India so poorly planned? Why do political leaders, authorities trade accusations instead of actually addressing the systemic failures? Most importantly, how many more innocent lives really have to be lost before public safety becomes the utmost first priority at rallies, festivals, celebrations? Because until accountability is enforced, until crowd management becomes more than just an afterthought, these tragedies may just continue to repeat.
Fight.
Ukraine has scored a major battlefield win in the east. In Kupiansk, drones from its unit blowing up 2 of Russia's most prized thermobaric rocket launchers. The launchers, in fact, the strike not only took out rare and powerful weapons, but also highlighted just how vulnerable Russia's frontline assets really have become to Ukraine's expanding drone warfare. According to Ukrainian media, Ukrainian forces destroyed 2 Russian systems, both in Kharkiv region. The weapon system was reportedly struck with explosive drones. According to Ukraine's drone regiment, the regiment released footage on YouTube on Monday, in fact, showing first-person view drones targeting the launchers in the Kupiansk sector. The video appears to show 2 separate strikes, one hitting a stationary MLRS, another hitting the same type of system on the move, possibly as Russian troops attempted to flee the attack. The Kiev Independent calling the Russian system a long-range artillery weapon that fires unguided rockets loaded with thermobaric warheads. And those warheads create huge blasts, sucking up the oxygen and creating intense pressure. In fact, they are designed to devastate people across an area. Any fire that they cause is a secondary effect. Russian forces use the system to bombard Ukrainian positions as well as civilian areas with these thermobaric rockets that are capable of leveling fortifications and devastating entire neighborhoods. Dubbed a legend by Russian war reporters, it fires salvos of 24 unguided rockets, each weighing more than 200 kilograms. The rockets disperse a flammable aerosol before detonation, creating a massive pressure drop that can rupture internal organs and also cause instant death. The system is designed to destroy lightly armed vehicles, enemy personnel in open terrain, and defensive strongholds depending on configuration. Its cost is estimated between $6.5 million and $15 million. Now, this is not the first time Ukraine drone units have destroyed Russia's prized war equipment. In June as well, Ukraine's Phoenix drone unit destroyed a Russian system along with a tank, a robotic vehicle, and several soldiers in the Kharkiv region. And then in early September 2024, Ukraine's 24th Separate Mechanized Brigade took out another near Chasiv Yar in Donetsk while it was actively firing the rockets. FPV drone footage showed the system launching 2 projectiles before being hit repeatedly and coming to a halt as smoke rose around it. Ukraine's repeated strikes on Russia's rocket launchers showing just why drones are becoming a game changer on the battlefield. These powerful launchers are some of Russia's most feared weapons, capable of devastating troops with fire and pressure blasts. But their size and light armor also making them vulnerable, and Ukraine has learned to exploit that with precision drone strikes as well. Each time one is destroyed, it not only reduces Russia's firepower, it also sends out a message that even the most advanced, heavily armed systems are not safe from modern, agile tactics. And for Ukraine, these victories are more than just symbolic. They tilt the balance, protect towns and soldiers, and also show that innovation can outmatch raw firepower. The United States is racing towards a possible government shutdown with just hours remaining until a midnight deadline. Both Democrats and Republicans remain deeply divided over how to extend the government funding, threatening to paralyze federal operations and disrupt services across the country. At the heart of the standoff is a disagreement over healthcare subsidies and government funding. Democrats are pushing for an extension of health benefits, including subsidies for the Affordable Care Act, which are set to expire. They argue that failing to extend these subsidies will lead to higher insurance premiums for millions of Americans. On the other hand, Republicans are insisting that any deal to keep the government open should be clean and without any additional policy measures like healthcare subsidies. The stakes are high, to say the least, and if an agreement is not reached by midnight, then federal workers could face furloughs, services ranging from national parks to federal courts could be disrupted, a prolonged shutdown risks slowing overall economic growth and unsettling the financial markets. Beyond the economic impact, a shutdown could also erode the public trust in the government, creating long-term challenges for political leaders on both sides. In the Senate, the Republicans are pushing for a short-term funding resolution that would last until November 21, basically. But the Democrats are also resisting this, and they are arguing for a longer-term solution. The White House has also warned of potential job cuts in the federal agencies if the shutdown occurs. They want an extension of subsidies that help lower health insurance costs for millions of Americans. They are also pushing to reverse the Medicaid cuts made under Trump's tax legislation. Not just that, Democrats are calling for the restoration of funding to vital public institutions, including health agencies like the CDC and NIH. And during Trump's first term, remember, America experienced 3 government shutdowns, including the longest in history, lasting 36 days. This was in early 2019. And that long shutdown was also sparked by disputes over funding for a border wall and had a significant economic cost as well, which is estimated at around $11 billion. And while last-minute deals have often prevented shutdowns in the past, the current deadlock over healthcare and funding is putting additional pressure on the lawmakers. With less than a day to go, the outcome remains anything but certain. Meanwhile, Donald Trump delivered a fiery speech before the top U.S. military commanders. In his address, Trump touched on issues far beyond defense policy, from Ukraine to Gaza and back to Washington. The American president juggled through various topics. He hailed his decision to send National Guards in U.S. cities, adding that the troops could use these deployments for training purposes. He said the war is on the home front and U.S. military is reawakening the warrior spirit.
reawakening the warrior spirit, and this is a spirit that won and built this nation, and from the cavalry that tamed the Great Plains to the ferocious, unyielding power of Patton Bradley and the great General Douglas MacArthur. These are all great men in this effort. We're a team, and so my message to you is very simple. I am with you, I support you, and as president, I have your backs 100%.
President Trump, who is also the commander-in-chief of the U.S. Armed Forces, questioned the aesthetics of U.S. warships, which he described as ugly. And once again, he expressed his love for the word tariff and struck the Nobel Peace Prize string. Listen in.
Will you get the Nobel Prize? Absolutely not. They'll give it to some guy that didn't do a damn thing. They'll give it to a guy that wrote a book about the mind of Donald Trump and what it took to solve the wars. And he'll get the Nobel Prize will go to a writer. No, but well, let's see what happens. But it's be a big insult to our country. I will tell you that. I don't want it. I want the country to get it.
Throughout the speech, the audience remained mostly silent, as is tradition within the military for the political speeches as such. And sensing the silence, Donald Trump even joked, saying he has never walked into a room so silent. Speaking before Trump, the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth struck a more hardline tone. He said the era of Department of Defense is over and the time has started for the Department of War. He called for an end to military diversity programs, demanding that combat jobs meet the highest male standard only.
That's why today, at my direction, the era of unprofessional appearance is over. No more beardos. The era of rampant and ridiculous shaving profiles is done. Simply put, if you do not meet the male-level physical standards for combat positions, cannot pass a PT test, or don't want to shave and look professional, it's time for a new position or a new profession.
Hegseth urged any officers who disagreed with his vision to do the honorable thing and resign. He criticized the retired generals who have clashed with Trump. And all of this unfolding against the backdrop of a potential government shutdown. Unless the lawmakers reach that last-minute deal, U.S. federal agencies will begin closing non-essential services starting from tomorrow. Shifting our focus now to the tensions in South China Sea, where Chinese fighter jets reportedly simulated missile strikes on a British warship in Taiwan Strait. In a Times UK report, the British Navy has revealed new details about its operations in the Taiwan Strait and the South China Sea early this month. And according to naval officers, Chinese fighter jets staged simulated missile strikes against the British frigate as it sailed through the Taiwan Strait. These maneuvers, known as constructive kills, involve pilots performing the steps of an attack without actually firing weapons. At the same time, the UK's aircraft carrier, HMS Prince of Wales, led a strike group through the South China Sea, where Chinese naval vessels allegedly monitored its every move. The carrier group passed near the Spratly Islands, an area heavily contested and home to Chinese-built military bases in the South China Sea. As part of a navigation operation, a British support ship and a Norwegian frigate sailed near one of these islands. British naval officers saying the aim was to assert international passage rights in the waters claimed by Beijing. Chinese warships and aircraft closely tracked the group, with radio messages in English ordered British and allied vessels to leave the area. Despite the close interactions, British officers reported that Chinese forces kept a safe distance. Still, the maneuvers highlighted the sharp tensions surrounding Taiwan and the South China Sea. China, remember, regards Taiwan as an integral part of its territory and regularly conducts air and naval operations across the strait. Beijing also claims nearly all of the South China Sea, a vital route for global trade. Even though an international tribunal in 2016 ruled against its claims, China has rejected that ruling. The British strike group was reportedly escorted by ships from Norway and Japan, which positioned themselves between the Prince of Wales and Chinese vessels to prevent them from getting too close, with the British naval officer stating that the mission provided real-world challenges impossible to replicate in training exercises. The PLA's Eastern Command accused the UK of provocation after the warship sailed through the Taiwan Strait, the encounters underscoring how the waters around Taiwan and the South China Sea remain a flashpoint where each movement continues to be watched closely. France is in a deep political mess. Newly appointed Prime Minister there, facing strong headwinds. We know what you're thinking. It's a déjà vu. The job is tough, definitely, but it seems like there is no way out right now, from the public outrage on the streets to the political deadlock in the parliament. His rather short time in power has been highly tumultuous already. Just 20 days since taking power, the threat of a confidence motion is looming on him. In fact, he is President Macron's third head of government in less than a year, He is yet to name a cabinet or present the 2026 budget, leaving the country's political machinery paralyzed in a way. Without a parliamentary majority, his survival depends on the opposition parties. The populist right National Rally and the Socialists have both warned that they will bring him down. In fact, he faces the same task that his predecessors failed at, bringing the country's budget deficit down to 3%. That currently stands at 5.8%. The political rivals are dragging him in different directions. The Socialists want higher taxes on the rich. The party leader has issued a final warning saying unless he changes course, his party will vote to remove him. And on the other end of the political spectrum, Marine Le Pen's National Rally also taking a strong stance. It is demanding a total break with Macron's pro-business policies and tougher immigration curbs. Now, if the Prime Minister bends to these demands, he risks losing the support of Macron's own centre-right coalition. Not just that, he is also facing a personal scandal. A teachers' union has filed a lawsuit accusing him of lying about his university qualifications. His official CV claiming a master's degree in public law, but records suggest he never completed the course. And the Prime Minister has called it a false controversy, insisting that he is being targeted because of his lower middle-class background. Still, he has quietly changed his CV to say he studied public law rather than graduated. He now has two options, basically. Find a way to steer France out of this political mess or take the fall, just like his predecessors did. Moving on for now, Nepal is taking bold new steps to clean up the world's highest peak. Mount Everest is now at the center of a 5-year national strategy aimed at restoring its natural beauty and protecting fragile ecosystems from decades of pollution. The move following a Supreme Court directive, as melting glaciers and rising climbing traffic have exposed the long buried waste, including human remains, across the Everest region. And experts are warning the growing garbage crisis is not just a visual blight, it's also a major threat to downstream communities and the environment overall. Under the Clean Mountain Strategy, the government basically plans to deploy a dedicated team of mountain rangers to manage the waste on the slopes, including at high altitude camps. Drones may also be used to retrieve the trash from the areas that are hard to access. The budget currently allocating 308 million Nepali rupees for the plan. But insiders are saying the actual cost may exceed 1 billion. Over the years, climbers, Sherpas, expedition teams have left behind oxygen canisters, ropes, plastic, food waste, even human waste. In just one spring season, in 2024, for example, more than 96 tons of garbage were removed from the mountain, with nearly 28 tons being human waste alone. To tackle the crisis, Nepal has raised the climbing fees and also introduced new rules like refundable garbage deposits and mandatory poop bags. Mountaineering is a major source of revenue for the country. It is home to 8 of the world's 10 tallest mountains, after all. Climbing fees brought in about $5.9 million just last year, with Everest accounting for more than 3/4 of that. But experts are saying enforcement and consistent policy are crucial. Without sustained action and funding, Everest may continue to symbolize not just human achievement, but also, unfortunately, environmental neglect in a way. Reports suggesting the U.S. Treasury's gold reserves are now valued at over $1 trillion at the current market prices. Now, that's a figure that's 90 times more than their official balance sheet value. The substantial gain is a result of gold's remarkable 45% surge in 2025. Other precious metals have also seen significant gains. Silver has been a standout performer, rising by 53% this year, while platinum is up around 50%. Palladium up around 39%. The primary drivers for this rally across precious metals being a combination of geopolitical instability, economic uncertainty, and central bank policies. Global trade conflicts and geopolitical tensions have also led the investors to seek the traditional safe haven of precious metals. At the same time, the Federal Reserve's resumed interest rate cuts have weakened the US dollar, making these commodities more attractive to international buyers. Other central banks around the world have also been actively increasing their gold reserves to diversify away from the US dollar. And looking ahead, financial institutions have varying projections for these metals. Several major banks anticipate gold's upward trajectory to continue, with some setting targets higher than $4,000 per ounce. For silver, its dual role as a precious metal and an industrial commodity is a key factor. Analysts expect more upside for silver as it is supported by demand from the green energy sector, including solar panels and electric vehicles. Platinum, for that matter, also expected to benefit from the industrial demand, while palladium faces some headwinds from substitution with platinum. While the value of these tangible assets has increased, experts are also saying that this is a signal of growing distrust in traditional financial instruments. At the United Nations, developing nations are calling out the world's wealthiest countries for falling short on climate promises. Leaders from the island nations to African states warning that rising seas, droughts, deforestation are forcing communities to flee, and that the billions pledged in climate finance are nowhere near enough. From the Pacific to Africa, these countries are saying it is time for the richer countries, historically responsible for the most greenhouse gas emissions, to step up and fund the fight against climate change. Wealthy countries have struggled to keep up with their climate finance promises. Funding finally reached $100 billion a year, the amount agreed back in 2009, but only in 2022, 2 years late. Last year, at a UN climate summit, leaders pledged to provide $300 billion a year to developing countries by 2035. But many of those nations say that it's still nowhere near enough, and experts are estimating they will need at least $1 trillion a year by the end of the decade just to cope with the effects of climate change. And leaders say rich nations, the ones that historically caused the crisis, need to step up. Fiji's Prime Minister has put it rather bluntly, quoting, "Those who shoulder the blame must foot the bill." Climate change, in fact, is already forcing people to flee. Ghana's president told the assembly that many migrants are climate refugees, displaced as deserts spread and villages become unlivable. Somalia's president warning that his country is forced to make impossible financial trade-offs, limiting investments in resilience and development. Extreme droughts, floods, rising sea levels hitting livelihoods and displacing families, and around 10% of the developing nations' budgets going just to respond to climate change. But some countries are meeting their commitments. Germany, for instance, provided a record 11.8 billion euros in 2024, but leaders of small island nations like Tuvalu, Madagascar, are calling for funding to reach those who need it the most and with fewer obstacles. Even major emitters are under scrutiny. China saying it would cut emissions by 7 to 10% by 2035. A pledge that drew criticism from the EU, which called it far short of what's required. Palau's president, meanwhile, urging world leaders to see the crisis firsthand. I'm quoting, "If the world is serious about 1.5 degrees, come to our region, see what the Pacific is facing and be moved to act," quote unquote. For developing nations, you see, the message to wealthy countries is quite clear. Promises are not enough. Communities are already on the move. Livelihoods are already at risk, and time is clearly running out. Unless the rich nations actually step up and act decisively, the human and environmental cost of climate change will only get worse, and it may be the smaller developing nations that will be forced to pay the price for these broken promises. How many hours in a day do you end up spending on your phone? What if there was a limit to that? We are not talking about self-imposed limits here. Some residents in Japan are gearing up for major changes. The country's first citywide smartphone use cap takes effect this week. What is this all about? The city of Toyoaki is asking residents to cut smartphone use to just 2 hours a day, only 2 hours, sparking questions like, should the authorities or the governments, for that matter, even have a say and control how much time you end up spending on your phone? Should they be the ones making decisions about personal tech habits? Let's first tell you more about what's actually happening in Japan. Starting Wednesday, the residents there Starting Wednesday, residents in that city have been encouraged to limit device use during leisure hours, defined as time outside work, study, or even daily necessities, to about 2 hours a day. The city has also advised the primary school-aged children to refrain from using their devices after 9 p.m. and older students after 10 p.m. The ordinance, passed September 22nd by majority vote, is believed to be Japan's first citywide screen time guideline for all residents, not just children. It excludes schoolwork, job-related use, and household tasks. City officials saying the rule is symbolic and not binding. Exceeding the 2-hour guideline, even by several hours, is acceptable, provided sleep and family communication is not being disrupted. In fact, the mayor has defended the ordinance, saying the goal is not to police behavior, but to encourage healthier sleep and stronger family relationships. The policy has drawn mixed reactions. Some have praised it as a much needed intervention, while others are accusing the city of overstepping its role. The initiative now joining a wave of global efforts to try and address screen limits, particularly among young people. The fact is, in this day and age, there is no running away from your digital devices, from technology. But the key here is in moderation. Basically, self-reflection is important. You could be asking yourself, is using tech occupying your time and attention that you feel could be better used elsewhere? There are apps that temporarily lock people out of their devices, luxury retreats limiting guest Wi-Fi access, restaurants that ban phones at the table. Such solutions promise to also help boost well-being by letting people reconnect with real life. Interest in digital detoxing has been growing steadily recently. If you are dealing with the constant cravings and feel the need to address it, you should try and understand perhaps if there is dependency and how it impacts you. You could also try turning off notifications, for example, if you need to try and reduce the time you spend on your devices or watch your screen time and put limits on it. If you need to, there are ways to take control of your devices and the time that you spend on them. Across India, Durga Ashtami is being celebrated with a lot of grandeur and festive spirit from pandals inspired by several creations. We tell you more about how different parts are celebrating. On that note, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas tonight. This is me, Molly Gambhir, signing off. Thanks very much for watching.
Where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders. Psychopaths who defy explanation. International war crimes. And millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Prime Crime is your front row seat to darkness.
So today is a historic day for peace, and Prime Minister Netanyahu.
If Hamas rejects your plan, Mr. President, then Israel will finish the job by itself.
Israel would have my full backing to finish the job.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One.
Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. To some, it's an extreme ideology. To others, it's the very soul of India. To some, it's rebellion. To others, it's a principle of nation building. Coming soon to challenge perceptions in RSS centenary year, Kesariya at 100.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One.
Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. To some, it's an extreme ideology. To others, it's the very soul of India. To some, it's rebellion. To others, it's a principle of nation building. Coming soon to challenge perceptions in RSS centenary year, Kesariya at 100.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
Welcome to WION Pulse. We are glad you're watching WION World is One. American Joker, the headlines.
Politicians somehow come to believe that our job is to police the far reaches of Kenya and Somalia, while America is under invasion from within. We're under invasion from within.
President Trump says U.S. faces a war from within from both crime and immigration. This as he addressed the top U.S. military officers in Quantico.
It's tiring to look out at combat formations, or really any formation, and see fat troops. Likewise, it's completely unacceptable to see fat generals and admirals in the halls of the Pentagon.
U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth slams fat generals and diversity initiatives that he says led to decades of decay in the military, says commanders should resign if they don't support his agenda. Reform UK's Nigel Farage says that Keir Starmer is unfit to be Prime Minister. Responding to the Prime Minister's keynote address at the Labour Party conference, Farage says Starmer has decided to descend into the gutter. Poland arrests a 46-year-old Ukrainian man suspected of involvement in the 2022 sabotage of the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline in the Baltic Sea. This follows a European arrest warrant issued by Berlin. Election observers from the Commonwealth criticized the fairness of Pakistan's 2024 general election in a long-awaited final report, says Imran Khan-led PTI put at a disadvantage, warns voters' fundamental political rights had been restricted. Actor and TVK chief Vijay takes aim at Tamil Nadu Chief Minister M.K. Stalin and the ruling DMK, hints darkly at a conspiracy ahead of next year's election in his first remarks since 41 died in the stampede in Karur. Security forces used tear gas against protesters in Madagascar's capital. This despite President Andry Rajoelina dissolving the government to address youth demands for water access and an end to power cuts. A strong earthquake with a preliminary magnitude of 6.7 hits central Philippines, sends people dashing out into streets, damaging a stone church and knocking out power in some areas. U.S. stock markets edge lower and gold retreats from a record high as traders steal themselves from a possible U.S. government shutdown. And Jose Mourinho returns to Stamford Bridge. The Portuguese manager will take charge of Benfica against former team Chelsea in the Champions League tonight. The United States is on the brink of its first government shutdown in nearly 7 years. This is in the aftermath of a bitter standoff in Washington over health care and spending. Large parts of the federal government will be forced to suspend operations unless lawmakers strike a deal before midnight. President Trump and his Democratic opponents made little progress at a White House meeting towards undoing prospects of a shutdown. Both sides say the other will be at fault if Congress fails to extend government funding beyond the Tuesday deadline. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance slammed the Democrats, blaming them for placing conditions on support for a short-term budget bill. which could potentially push the U.S. to a shutdown in less than 36 hours.
Very frank conversation with the Senate and House Democratic leadership. Look, the principle at stake here is very simple. We have disagreements about tax policy, but you don't shut that government down. We have disagreements about health care policy, but you don't shut the government down. You don't use your policy disagreements as leverage to not pay our troops, to not have essential services of government actually function.
Meanwhile, President Trump has said that many federal workers may be laid off if the U.S. government shuts down.
President, if there is a shutdown, how many federal workers do you plan to lay off?
Well, we may do a lot, and that's only because of the Democrats. And as you know, they want to be able to take care of people that have come into our country illegally, and no system can handle that. And so we're totally opposed on that. But we can't take it. We just can't do it. I'd love to do everybody. I'd love to do the whole world. But our country can't handle people that come into our country illegally. And they want to give them full health care benefits.
The clash, in fact, reflects deeper divisions between the two parties, while Democrats see the midnight deadline as leverage to protect Affordable Care Act tax credits and curb Medicaid cuts. Republicans argue Democrats are holding the public hostage for political gain and insist that health and government funding must be dealt with as separate issues. If both sides fail to meet a consensus, many government agencies face the risk of shutting down until Congress approves additional funding. Meanwhile, hundreds of thousands of workers have already been either suspended or asked to work without pay. Apart from political implications, the move has a significant impact on world markets. With the dollar and equities slipping and gold hitting another record high, the last government shutdown took place back in 2018 during President Trump's first term. 3 government shutdowns happened during Trump's first term itself. Now, according to the Congressional Research Service, there have been 14 shutdowns since 1981, many lasting only a day or two. One shutdown took place between December 1995 to January 1996 due to a funding gap. That one lasted over 20 days. The most recent one lasted 35 days between December 2018 and January 2019 during Trump's first term in office due to a dispute between the president and Congress over border security. This is also reportedly the longest shutdown that the U.S. ever faced. What stands out in the current standoff is the position of the Trump team, which appears bent on shuttering large parts of the U.S. government for an extended period. Officials have threatened to use a shutdown to identify non-essential workers who could then be permanently let go. During Trump 2.0, the administration has slashed spending and pushed workers out of their jobs, and now a shutdown is feared to only accelerate this process further. We earlier spoke to Professor Andrew Latham. He's a distinguished scholar of international relations, strategic studies, and political economy, and this is what he told us.
The more likely scenario is, well, either a very, very last-minute continuing resolution, or there will be a short shutdown measured in days, not weeks or months, and then there'll be another continuing resolution. Neither side has, beyond the theatrics, neither side has an interest in a long-term shutdown. So that's the way it's shaken out in the past, in the recent past, and that's the way it's likely to shake out this time.
All eyes are on the U.S. President Donald Trump's proposed Gaza plan to end the war that has been going on for nearly 2 years. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has given a nod, but Hamas is yet to give its final call for peace. The diplomatic waves around Gaza ceasefire are only growing louder and larger every passing hour. For one, the Israeli Prime Minister, who just returned from Washington, has backed the peace proposal, even though the Prime Minister remains strongly opposed to a Palestinian state.
Instead of Hamas isolating us, we turned things around and isolated Hamas. Now the whole world, including the Arab world and the Muslim world, are putting pressure on Hamas to accept the conditions we set together with President Trump to release all our hostages, both the living and the dead. When the IDF remains in most of the Strip, who would believe that?
Among the far right in Netanyahu's cabinet, Israel's finance minister says Netanyahu is just caving to international pressure, adding that this peace deal is no cause for celebration. While European nations have hailed Trump's proposal, Trump's former National Security Advisor John Bolton says he does not think that Hamas or Iran will agree to Washington's current proposal.
Well, I don't think there is a Palestinian state, and I don't think there ever will be a Palestinian state. I don't think what was announced today is going to happen. I'm not sure Hamas is willing to sign up, and I don't think Iran is.
Qatar says it was set to hold talks with Hamas negotiators Egypt and Turkey Tuesday to discuss U.S. President Donald Trump's Gaza plan, adding that Hamas would study it responsibly. Under the current proposal, calls for a ceasefire, release of hostages by Hamas within 72 hours, disarmament of the group and a gradual Israeli withdrawal from Gaza, followed by a post-war transition authority headed by the U.S. President Donald Trump. Let's now take a look at how Palestinians and Israelis are reacting to Trump's Gaza proposal.
This plan falls in Trump and Israel's favor. They have interest in Gaza. They want to end Gaza in any way possible. There's gas in Gaza. They want to turn Gaza into Trump resorts, and he wants to finish his plan.
If they release all the hostages at once, then we are finished, we are completely done, we will have no life left. Also, the story of handing over the hostages while they still occupy Gaza, and Trump is planning on how he can take a hold of Gaza and turn it into resorts and touristic areas.
Great day for Israel. I don't see anyone from right to left who's going to go against it. The only question is now if Hamas will approve and end this misery that we are in it for almost 2 years.
I feel that whatever happens, we absolutely need to end the war and to bring the hostages home. I think this should have been done 2 years ago. I think we've done it way too late, with far too many deaths on both sides, our soldiers, our hostages, and the Gazan people.
As the Israel-Hamas war enters its second year and Donald Trump drums out his 20-point plan to halt the conflict in Gaza, a new poll from the New York Times and Siena University has shown that American support for Israel is declining. According to the poll, U.S. backing for Israel has undergone a seismic reversal, with large sections of voters expressing starkly negative views about the Israeli government's management of the war. In a new shift, more American voters are now siding with the Palestinians over Israelis. 35% now side with Palestinians, 34% with Israelis, and 31% are either unsure or support both equally. Earlier, in the wake of the Hamas-led attacks on Israel on October 7th, the numbers were different. 47% of American voters sided with Israel, while 20% supported the Palestinians. The shift in public opinion comes as more Americans now oppose providing economic or military aid to Israel, a sharp break from the strong support the country has traditionally received. 6 in 10 voters believe Israel should end its war in Gaza, regardless of whether Hamas is eliminated. Meanwhile, nearly 40% of respondents now believe that Israel is intentionally targeting civilians in Gaza. The poll is a stark reflection of the extent of which Gaza's long-term war has reshaped American attitudes. Once strong bipartisan support for Israel is now breaking down, more sympathy is shifting towards Palestinians, particularly among the younger generation. The U.S. Air Force is putting a permanent drone presence in Korean Peninsula. It has stationed MQ-9 Reaper combat and reconnaissance drones in South Korea for the first time. The new deployment involves reviving a World War II-era squadron to bolster security amid simmering military tensions in that region. The 431st Expeditionary Reconnaissance Squadron has been activated at Kunsan Air Base, situated approximately 180 kilometers south of Seoul. It will fly MQ-9 Reaper drones from the installation. It's another move towards strengthening the U.S. military's air capabilities on the peninsula. The MQ-9 Reaper, dubbed as the Sky's Assassin, is a multi-purpose unmanned aerial vehicle that can perform a variety of combat and other missions. It is known for its advanced surveillance and precision strike capabilities, with an extended range of more than 2,575 kilometers and the ability to stay airborne indefinitely with area refueling. The MQ-9 Reaper can significantly bolster the U.S. and South Korea's operational readiness and response capabilities. The range of the Reapers covers not only North Korea. The demilitarized zone between North and South Korea is about 241 kilometers north of Kunsan. The Chinese mainland is only about 402 kilometers from Kunsan. And the Bohai Sea, where the Chinese Navy often holds exercises, is about 966 kilometers from the U.S. air base. This strategic position is expected to provide enhanced surveillance and intelligence gathering capabilities crucial for maintaining regional stability. The deployment comes after U.S. repositioned F-16 fighter jets closer to North Korea in recent months. It also comes just weeks after North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un stood shoulder to shoulder with Chinese President Xi Jinping at a massive military parade in Beijing. Permanently stationing the Reapers at Kunsan shows Washington's commitment to South Korea and its other Pacific allies. The deployment comes at a time the Trump administration looks at security challenges closer to home. It has been announced how many Reapers will be based at Kunsan, but reports citing